Hey guys, as you probably noticed from the title of this video, this particular 3-for-all quickie is, as PBS used to put it, from viewers like you. Yes, it's the Patreon request quickie bonanza-gasm spectacular. I'll think of a better name later. And since it just so happened I got 3 Patreon requests at roughly the same time, I figured, hey, what better way to streamline the process than to put them all together. Just a friendly reminder, if you'd like to see your album of choice reviewed on the show, be sure to hit up that Patreon account. But buyer beware, all a Patreon quickie request does is guarantee that I'll review it on the show. As appreciative as I am for the financial support, I'm not going to just blindly heap praise onto something just because someone paid money for it. I'm not PewDiePie. Oh, snap! So I sincerely hope some of you didn't dump money on me just so I would smother your favorite band in tongue kisses. Because you'll find out very quickly that instead of hiring a prostitute, you've hired a pit bull trained to bite for the groin. Which leads us perfectly into... This particular album was requested by TVB... Look, do you mind if I just call you TVB? Okay, cool. And you know what? I see where your head was at. I understand the logic behind your choice here. Mudvayne did make my top 10 list of favorite nu metal bands, to the dismay of all those people upset I left Korn and Linkin Park off, and I do stand by that decision because Mudvayne had some really impressive stuff. But the reason I liked Mudvayne so much was mostly due to their exquisitely tight rhythm section. And seeing that Hellyeah is a band that consists of the singer and guitarist from Mudvayne, the band's 2 weakest assets easily... Yeah, to put it in the stupidest pun I could possibly make, I'm not falling for this. Though hell, Greg Tribbett hasn't been in the band since 2014. Apparently he quit and they hired a new guitarist and bassist. So, does the lineup change affect anything here? Does it dog's bollocks? The new guitarist just seems to be following Greg Tribbett's lead, for all I can tell. And if there was one guitarist I would tell you not to emulate... well, it would probably actually be someone like Chad Kroeger or CC DeBille, but Tribbett would make that top 10. And Vinnie Paul is doing nothing to help sway me here. I mean, truth be told, I've never been a huge fan of Paul's drumming style. Even back in the glory days, he's easily the 3rd best thing about Pantera. I'm sorry. I come from the Travis Barker, Danny Carey, Neil Peart school of drumming, i.e. complexity is God, hallowed be thy name. And Paul's drumming style is so basic and simplistic. On an album that's trying to be this heavy, it really holds the rest of the music back. A lot of newer metal drummers play too much these days, Vinny? Well, dude, there's a damn good reason for it, amigo. Come on! Though I will give some props to Chad Gray for his vocals, that is one thing Hellyeah actually does pretty well. They write music more suited to its strengths, i.e. shrieking and shouting, and they tend to leave most of the clean singing to bands that are too pussy to not use spaces between words. And Chad does do a pretty decent job on the album vocally, though I do kind of have to immediately take these props away for some of the lyrics. They aren't from ashes to new abysmal, but they are coyly eyeing Five-Finger Death Punch from across the bar, if you know what I mean. Though, given these are coming from a band who willingly chose to call their album Undone-able, I don't really know what I was expecting here. But despite all these gripes, I don't necessarily hate the album. It just feels so blasé and generic. It's the kind of thing you hear on your local generic-ass rock radio station after they've exhausted the weak supply of Daughtry and Nickelback and need to scramble for something samey and homogenous lest they lose a single cent of advertiser revenue. It's blech. It doesn't offend by any means, and if you're into this kind of thing, I mean, I won't dissuade you from it. It does what it does effectively. I mean, some people love to eat at Panera Bread, and while I won't complain if that's the only choice we have for lunch that day, I'm also not going to go out of my way to compliment the chef, you know? Undone-able gets 2.5 punctuation lessons out of 5. Violent Femmes. Okay, this request comes to us from Austin Willicke, a longtime supporter of the show and hopefully a continued supporter of the show after butchering his last name like that. Thanks again, Austin. Now on to the disappointment. I mean, review. God damn it. You know, Violet and Femmes is a band I feel kind of bad for, but please don't take that the wrong way. I really rather like the Femmes. As someone that's a big fan of Front Bottoms, Joyce Manor, and modern baseball, how can I not show love for the band that's basically responsible for them all? But I say I feel bad for them because, whereas I have extremely fond memories of their self-titled debut, I can't really say that much for anything else they've done, you know? What I'm saying is, these guys kinda peaked early and never had anywhere else to go but down from 1983, and that's not an enviable position to be in. But to their credit, they never went too terribly far down, like certain bands do. But these guys never truly disappointed. I think so, at least. Even if they never had that blister in the sun flare back up again at any point. So I can't say I was exactly excited when I heard they were coming out with their first new album in 16 years. But I was mildly glad to hear it was happening. Like when Beavis and Butthead came back for that one season a few years back. Hey, everyone was glad to see it, and I think most of us really enjoyed it. Though not enough to keep the show going, you know what I mean? So while I didn't have lofty expectations for this thing, I will say that it both met and rose above the expectations I had. This album, more so than a lot of other stray Femmes I've caught over the years, sounds more like that first glorious effort than any other album to date. It's pretty much all acoustic all the time here. None of that Children of the Revolution malarkey. It's stripped down, raw, and unflinching in its soundscape. It pretty much bucks every modern trend and says, fuck it, let's, in the words of the immortal Danny DeVito,
I'm gonna get real weird with it.
And it does that in the best possible way. It's a very folky album, but also one that has a lot of energy and life to it. Something a lot of other folk acts could take more than a few lessons from. Songs like Memory, Holy Ghost, and Traveling Solves Everything almost sound like acoustic versions of electric songs that exist on some other hypothetical Bizarro World Femmes album that never got recorded. At times, this thing genuinely feels like an unplugged rock album, or perhaps what punk rock would have sounded like if amplifiers had never been invented. As someone who genuinely enjoys the Femmes, I took a lot out of this album, and if you're a Femme faithful, or if you're even just familiar with their best works, I do recommend giving this one your time. It's very enjoyable. Though it does suffer from a problem. A big problem. A problem that I usually only cover in my critical condition videos, but this serves as an excellent case study for it. You see, this album suffers from the problem. Yeah. At the end of the day, for as much as I liked it, it's just kinda more violent Femmes. And whether I can recommend this album to you personally really just depends on your feelings towards the Femmes. Do you consider Gone Daddy Gone to be a life-changing moment? Then jump into this one without reservation. You'll love it. Are you less enthused about the prospect of a new Femmes? Then this probably won't do much to sway your judgment. This album is really only as good as your opinions toward the band are. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think anyone was expecting more or less from them. You know, the Femmes should just sound like the Femmes. If that's done, then that's enough. And they've done that here, rather well in my opinion. If you like the Femmes, you'll like this album. If you don't, you probably won't. As for me, I think the Femmes are okay. So hence, I thought this album was okay. We Can Do Anything gets 3.5 O's out of 5 Ks. Okay, now here's an album I heard a lot of people talking about, and thanks to Terrell McClanahan, you'll now get to hear me talk about it for roughly 3 to 5 minutes. Cool. Seal the Deal and Let's Boogie, or alternately titled, if going by the cover image, Mustache Man vs. the World. Can't say I'd actually heard of this Danish quartet outside the hype surrounding the album, but I figured I'd give it an honest go, especially now that I'm pretty much obligated to, you know. But I do want to say that out of everything I heard for this quickie, this was the album that impressed me the most, hence why it gets last billing. God, I really need to mix this formula up next time I do this. I'm becoming way too predictable. You know, as I alluded to in the past, I'm a guy that uses Spotify pretty much the same way Rick James used the crack, and one of the niftiest features on Spotify is the recommended artist list. If you're listening to a band and you like what you hear, you can head on over there to see who else kind of sounds just like them. But when I did this for Volbeat, I was shocked to see the artists they were lining them up with. Disturbed? Black Label Society? Five Finger Death? Oh, fuck off with that. The collection was a weird mix of nu metal artists, which blew my mind given the album I just heard. I mean, based on what I was listening to, I was shocked I didn't see Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, or fucking Elvis on that list. What the hell? Yeah, we do have a kinda heavy, sort of alt-metal sound on our hands, but the songs here are written and sung in a much more classical rock style. Michael Poulsen isn't so much shouting or shrieking his lyrics, as he is downright crooning them. The dude sings with a sparkling clean register and uses a lot of classical-sounding vibrato. He's doing practically nothing to convey edginess, anger, or attitude in his voice, and you know what? I rather dug that approach. It's a nice change of pace for the genre. It's nice to see a frontman who doesn't have to prove his manliness by horse belching an entire evening's worth of Red Bull into our faces. Take a note of it, Ivan Moody. And the guitar work was pretty impressive too. Songs are structured in a way to leave themselves open for some nice riffing and the occasional exquisite solo here and there. A less talented band would probably leave most of these verses and choruses to standard power chords or simplistic progressions, simply because they can get away with it. But these guys throw in a lot more color and variety into the way they harmonize their axes, and I really dug what they were doing. It helped make songs like The Bliss, Black Rose, and Goodbye Forever really memorable. Overall, I was impressed with this album, but I certainly won't say it was faultless. This band certainly does like to boogie, but I'd say they've still got a bit of ways to go before sealing the deal here. For one, the album was a touch too long. I was enjoying the grooves these guys were laying down, don't get me wrong, but 53 minutes was a bit more than I was willing to stomach, especially on repeated playthroughs. I love miniature Reese's Cups, but if you forced me to eat a whole bag, I'd probably feel pretty sick afterwards. And this feeling is none more apparent than on the two covers, Rebound and Battleship Chains. Whoop-de-doo, my least favorite Teenage Bottle Rocket song and my least favorite Georgia Satellite song. Apart from all the other Georgia Satellite songs. These tracks really threw me off the pace this album was setting up, and they feel like an uncomfortable fit, especially since the album's already too long as it is. But to most people, I don't feel like those are gonna be issues, really. I mean, this is another album like Sound and Color, The Near Future, or The North Corridor. It scratches a particular itch I didn't even really know I had, and I feel like with time, this album will probably grow on me. I certainly have a lot of respect for it being so different and standing out amongst its peers, even if I'm not exactly head over heels for it just yet. I can see exactly why a lot of you are, and I really do see a lot of potential for this group. I'll definitely keep my ear to the ground with these guys. I feel like the future holds good things for them. Seal the Deal and Let's Boogie gets 4 boogies out of 5.